1 year ago, life got crazy. On April 10th, 2013, residents of Nobles County and most of the Midwest woke up to find they were under siege. Not by armed forces or by a man-made threat, not by a violent storm or flood, but by winter weather.
We have a lot of ice. We have a lot of power lines down. We have a lot of power poles that are snapped off. We have power lines that are running across roads.
What had started as thin, freezing rain the evening before had overnight become a thick coat covering vehicles, roads, trees, fences, and power lines.
I've got a few memories of the ice storm, but I think the one that really sticks out in my mind is we were renting a house at the time on Winifred, right next door to the Westminster Presbyterian Church on Winifred Street. And I think it was that first night when all the ice was coming down, and the middle of the night, and wife and I woke up to really loud booms, and sound like bombs hitting the house, and didn't really understand until it took a couple minutes to finally realize that, okay, the ice is breaking off the trees, and those are the trees hitting the roof of the house. And just lying there, wondering if the next tree branch that falls off, if that is going to be the one that comes through the roof of the house. Because they were loud, and it was scary. And I was just wondering, it's like, please don't come through the roof. Please don't come through the roof. And the other part of me is like, oh, thank goodness this is a rental.
The weight of the ice had the power lines stretched to capacity, and then they started to snap. Nobles County Sheriff Kent Wilkening made his way out to RadioWorks headquarters that morning to get information out to the general public, even as power poles all around the area continued to snap, leaving more lines broken or on the ground.
At least 90% or higher of Nobles County is without power.
But it wasn't just power lines and branches.
I actually stayed overnight the nights the freezing rain started, and that the tower collapsed out here at the RadioWorks headquarters. And interesting thing is, I slept right through it, apparently. The alarm went off about 1:32 in the morning, somewhere in there, and just kind of thought that we were on reduced power. So just got to back up a little bit, didn't go outside to look, and the morning came, and still didn't look outside till Matt Whitboom said something about 7 in the morning that the tower was down. Went outside and looked, and just kind of remember having just that surreal experience of seeing that tower lay down in bunches outside the RadioWorks headquarters.
The eeriness of that morning is so tightly etched in my memory, especially walking out the back door of the radio station to see the tower laying in a pile of rubble on the ground right behind the broadcast station, and thinking that I had heard and felt something out of the ordinary, and it was confirmed to my dismay and sickening feelingness to see our 580-foot tower. At that point, it looked like the whole thing was down, but of course we learned later that the majority of it had fallen off and changed the way we did business for the year.
I'll never forget getting a call that one of our towers had no power, and driving out to the tower site, and it's just pouring rain. When I was driving back, the power lines just hovering over the roadway, and then being woken up the next morning, getting a text from Matt Whitboom, a picture of our radio tower on the ground. I really didn't believe it till I actually saw it in person. I've been in radio over 15 years, and I've never experienced a disaster like this, where we were having wall-to-wall coverage on our radio stations that were still on the air, and then sitting in darkness at home, and the power going on and off. This is a storm I'll never forget.
By mid-morning, it was more than obvious. The fix to so many broken poles and lines would not be a quick one. Worthington Police Captain Chris Dibovic put things pretty succinctly.
Pretty much southwest Minnesota is crashed.
County Administrator Tom Johnson, relatively new to the area, scrambled to assist the city with power problems, but there wasn't much that could be done.
They don't have any prognosis because it's the main feeders coming to Worthington are all down in the ground, literally. There's 3 different services that we get power from, and we can run off of any one of them, but all 3 of them are down. And, yesterday afternoon they were optimistic one of them would be up last night, but I think with all this snow, I'd be amazed.
Worthington Mayor Alan Oberlo and his staff, along with Worthington Public Utilities, tried to keep information and power flowing, but there was only so much they could do.
We're pretty reliant on help from others at this point.
Apparently, Mother Nature didn't think the hardy Midwesterners fighting the ice had enough of the challenge, because then she sent the snow, and lots of it.
I made it into Radio Works headquarters for the ice, but the first morning that the snow came, I couldn't make it. That was the first time ever that I haven't made it here because of weather. I drove a few miles out of town, and I turned around and I had to go home. I called my husband and I asked him to go out and please open the garage door again because we had no power. So I got home and I got out of my car, and he was there in his bathrobe and he was shining a flashlight. You remember, it was about 4 a.m., and he shined the flashlight onto the back door where my car had been sitting warming up about 10 minutes before, and he said, "You might want to look at this." And where my car had been sitting was the branch of a tree that had come down off of a tree, landed on the roof of our house, punched holes in the roof of our house, and then slid down to the ground. And I just remember thinking, wow, it's a good thing I left when I did, but that was a hard thing to see. We knew right then that all of our plans for the summer had just changed because we would be working on our house.
Cleaning up the snow brought its own challenges, as branches still littered the streets and power lines still lay across roads and drooped down to the ground from snap poles.
The mayor has declared a snow emergency for Friday, April 12th through Monday, April 15th.
It's a Midwest storm. It's far-reaching, and we weathered the storm, so to speak, with the power lines, with all the ice yesterday and the day before, and then we have the snow on top of that. So it's just kind of rubbing salt into an open wound, and I know many people across southwest Minnesota are without power, and the good thing is the worst of the storm is over with. We still have some winds that are going to be increasing throughout the day today and then also tomorrow, and that's going to add a little bit more insult to the injury.
When the storm left the area, it left devastation in its wake.
Heading back into town finally after being trapped out at the station for a couple of days, heading home to see what was going on in my neighborhood and just seeing all the damage, all the ice and the tree branches on the streets and out in the country club was just a sight I'll never forget, because it was pretty sunny out, but all you saw was just destruction pretty much everywhere. And then also a few days after that, taking a trip with Radio Works General Manager Chad Cummings out to one of our towers southwest of town, and just that drive and seeing a bright sunny day, but just ice and damage and power lines down everywhere is some of my memories I'll never forget from the ice storm of 2013.
There were rolling blackouts throughout Worthington, while Worthington Public Utilities worked to keep households with some power, while street crews and the Nobles County Highway Department worked to clean roadways. Worthington Public Utilities was on the job, struggling to restore power. And then came a very welcome announcement.
We are planning to return to normal power and stop our diesel generation here locally. Really appreciate the coverage that you guys have given us and helping us out getting that word out, and appreciate the public's patience and the patience of our customers. I think they've done a great job, from industry down to the residential customers, responding to this situation, and just want to let them know that Worthington Public Utilities really appreciates their patience and their understanding through this.
Some struggles were not yet over. Some rural households were without power for more than a week, and local electric companies were working hard to get power restored.
We definitely have good news. Today, Federated believes we should have all of our Federated members back on today. We're down to about 75 that don't have power. And when you consider that at the peak of the storm last week we had 2,200 off, it's great to see that we're making progress.
The paperwork was just beginning. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, along with Homeland Security, sent representatives to help after a presidential disaster was declared. The process would take months, but the financial burden was eased with help from the state and our local legislators.
It's been a year, and I'm talking to Mayor Al Oberlo. Are we done? Have we recovered?
The city of Worthington is looking pretty good compared to what it did a year ago this day.
Okay. I know there's always going to be scars as far as the trees, branches, that's going to take forever to come back. But other than that, when you drive around town now, do you still see that storm?
Yeah, we really do, because we were, as a city, we're very conscious to get the boulevards cleaned up and get all of the city-owned trees, whether they're in parks or what. We did the best we could to get those. There's still branches falling down with strong winds, but now you look into backyards of private residences, that's where you still see a lot of scars. There's still a lot of hanging branches. Yeah, and at some point, we'll have to probably do an assessment and find out if there's any of those limbs that are on private property that pose hazards, and if there are, we'll probably have to send some notices out and tell people, you got to get these trees taken care of because they pose a risk or something.
Still, when you think back to what our world looked like a year ago, what comes to mind?
Well, I remember looking out in my front yard and listening as branches were coming down and the street was blocked, and thinking, what are we going to do and how are we going to get through this, and not knowing what the rest of the city looked like. And Chief Comiskey came out with a squad car, picked up myself and Craig Clark, our city administrator, and we tried to do a drive-through assessment of the community. And it didn't take very long to realize that we had to make an emergency disaster declaration and get things in motion then.
Was it a sickening feeling?
It was a pit in your stomach feeling, yes.
I think that would be hard as everyone's looking at you and looking for, how are we going to fix this? And you have to come up with the answers.
And we all, in our own, situations, the chief and administrator, myself, we all had issues personally that we had to deal with on our own properties, and then that becomes second fiddle. You have to deal with, let's get these streets and alleys opened up so that people can move about their way. And if we have to say a big thank you to the private contractors that the city contracted with, on a very short, just a matter of hours, we had private contractors working to assist city staff in starting to do the cleanup.
I think one of the things that comes to mind when I think about the days following that storm was just the way that everybody worked together. Everybody did what they could.
Absolutely. Neighbors helping neighbors, and there was not I don't think we had a lot of injury cases that happened because of it. There were a lot of warnings sent out telling people, to try to make sure you're careful and, let professionals do it, because the amount of devastation, unless you saw it, you wouldn't believe it.
So looking at it then a year later, do you just kind of go, phew, and hope it never happens again? Was that the crisis of your term of mayor, do you suppose?
Yeah, well, let's hope that that's as bad as it gets. But, I think we realized one thing, that preparation and scenarios that can exist in emergency management. It was a great deal of work with Nobles County and with FEMA and the city and other entities, and trying to get everybody on the same page. We had like command center type meetings that went on throughout the process, and there was no anybody claiming that they had more seniority over the other. Everybody just worked together. So it was a bad thing that had happened, but I think we learn now, if bad things happen in this community as far as natural disasters, we're going to be able to take care of it.
The people of southwest Minnesota, northwest Iowa, and other affected areas came together, helped one another, and made it through one of the worst disasters in our area for some time. Today, there's sun, warm temperatures, and many signs of spring in the air. So from RadioWorks to all of our listeners, happy anniversary.